week, Tianjin, China was the site of a massive and incredibly deadly port explosion. Watching that video, it looks like you're seeing the beginning of the end of the world. It looks like a nuclear weapon being dropped, but it wasn't. It was chemicals being stored, fuel being stored. Unfortunately, we don't have too much information yet about exactly what it was that composed the chemicals that resulted in the explosion, but we do know that the blasts, one of which was the equivalent of more than 20 tons of TNT exploding, left at least 56 dead, 700 injured, and thousands homeless. People were reporting that buildings up to 6 miles away from the explosion collapsed. We know that over 1,000 vehicles which were being stored nearby were also destroyed. And at this point, while we know quite a bit about Tianjin and the port, we don't know much about the actual chemicals that were being stored there. As of 2014, we know that Tianjin was the world's 10th busiest container port, but according to officials, they're unable to give us a detailed list of exactly what chemicals were being stored at the warehouse. And why would they have any idea of what dangerous, flammable chemicals were being stored there in great quantities? We do know one, though, sodium cyanide, a highly toxic chemical that can rapidly kill humans exposed to it. That was one of the materials being held there. And Greenpeace, which is monitoring the situation right now, says that they believe that other dangerous chemicals have been and continue to be stored in that area. And it might be a while until we get more information, but those living in the area, those who survived the explosion, are not taking any chances. We have a couple of quotes from one Liu Yu, who says, "I've told my parents not to drink tap water in the region because of fear of contamination." And another resident saying, "I asked my in-laws to take my daughter home. I don't want them to stay here. I'm worried. I heard it's going to rain later, and that would make the air toxic." Unfortunately, they don't know because, again, we don't know what the chemicals are. Thankfully, the district where the warehouse was located is thinly populated. It's roughly 40 kilometers from the center of the city, a sprawling metropolis of more than 13 million people, larger, by the way, than LA, to give you some perspective. About 90,000 lived within a 5-kilometer radius of the blast site. And that's great because, of course, the damage could have been much worse, but unfortunately we know that the residents of that area had previously protested asking for the extremely dangerous chemicals to be stored elsewhere. Perhaps now China will listen, but unfortunately it will be too late for the residents of Tianjin. And perhaps as one sort of silver lining to this, maybe countries like China and others will rethink the balance that they place between protection of private industry and the protection of their citizens. And that's my final judgment.